Click, click, bang. I can definitely see what they were trying to do, but unfortunately, they missed the mark. This is a story about a young boy falling into a life of crime after his bold dreams are crushed. A story about hopelessness and despair that come with having to give up on your dreams. Now, on paper, this is a good story that, if executed well, can take us on a journey together with the character and show us their mindset on how and why they take that fateful step. The story is not too unique, as we have seen it being done over and over again, but it's still a good premise for a story. After successfully securing a spot on the team to represent Kenya in Norway, Kevo is ecstatic before learning that his spot is taken by a rich politician for his nephew. His disappointment and his sister's medical situation lead him to Kasisi, the local gangman, to ask if he could join his line of work. And after getting denied, he tries his luck at doing honest labor. After a few missteps and his sister getting hospitalized, Kasisi finally decides to let Kevo join him. They start committing petty robberies before getting into armed robberies that have much dire consequences that escalate all the way to their eventual ends. In the beginning, the plot flows somehow naturally, up until the point where they start committing the robberies. That's when the plot starts relying on conveniences to make forward progress. Now, I can already hear you asking yourself, what the hell am I talking about? To put it in simple terms, what I mean when talking about conveniences is when the characters in the story have to be extremely lucky, or in our case, extremely unlucky, for the plot to carry forward. I remember when watching the show, I kept thinking to myself, it is very convenient that the first person they meet after getting the boomstick is Olivia. It is also very convenient that the bus they take just so happens to have the retiring officer and Kadesa as passengers. And the retiring officer was conveniently just in the perfect seat where he could read the boomstick's serial number. It is situations like this that make the story less believable. It's like the writers wanted to take the story in a certain direction but had no idea on how to do it, and were just like, hey, let's just make them unlucky. It's hard to describe the technical side of this show. It is not bad, but it's not great either. It's functional, like most of the shows and movies that I've watched so far, which is a shame because I had high hopes in the beginning when the camera was on the young boy on his bike. The camera was placed in interesting angles and I thought I finally found a show that will use the camera to tell a story, but that was not the case. The music in this show was too on the nose for my liking. I have no problem in using popular songs in a show, but here it was done in such a way that the song already tells us what to feel before the actors can express themselves, instead of the music being an emotional boost to what the character is feeling at the time. As in, instead of the character's emotion leading the music, it feels like the music was leading the emotions. The continuity was also an issue for me, because after Kevo and Kadesa spend a day together on a date, they arrive at a place when we can clearly still see that it's daytime. But when Kasisi decides to go to the same place, he arrives at night time, despite using a motorbike to get there, and starting the journey on an afternoon. It just doesn't make sense to me. I have a lot to say about the characters in this show, so I'll just start with the ones I liked and go from there. She is the comic relief character of the show, and also the funniest character for me. She lightens the mood of an otherwise heavy scene, but not in a way that undercuts or takes away from the emotions of the scene. An example is when Mo is mourning the loss of a friend. As the audience, we are in Mo's shoes, and when Mamushka shows up to console Mo, and Mo finally cracks a smile, we feel like she does what she is supposed to do. In short, her attempts at humor in such situations feel real and not forced. It also helps that her scenes are few and far between, so that she is not overdone to the point where she becomes annoying. Plus, the acting was done well. She is the emotional anchor of the show. We get to see the fallout or effects of Kevo's actions through her. In the beginning, we are shown how supportive she is when it comes to Kevo, as she is willing to do whatever it takes so that Kevo can pursue his dreams of becoming a footballer. This perfectly sets up the audience for heartbreak when she finds out that all the pain that she goes through is because of her brother. From finding out that Kevo is a thug, to losing her best friend Olivia, and later finding out that her brother is the one responsible, or partly responsible for what happened to her friend. Mo is an example of what happens when great writing meets great acting. We get a character that we can empathize with, and a performance we can remember. Jackie hands in the best performance in the show as a seasoned actor, and her experience definitely shows. Kevo is the main character of the show. He starts off being optimistic about his future in football, but when his chance gets stolen for the fourth time, he gives up and decides to get a real job instead. But after hitting dead end after dead end, he gets into a life of crime where he meets his eventual end. Now, on the surface, this looks like a complete character arc. That is until you take a step back and examine the story closely. Instead of his job hunting journey being used to show us his determination and perseverance, it exposes his lack of drive. It's not like he is being denied opportunities at every turn, but he seemingly is able to land a new job every day, but quits after hitting a minor setback, in that he gives up easily. And even before he tries to get a job, he asks Kasisi if he could join his crew. This shows us that he was looking for the easy way out right from the start. This is a problem, since the show is trying to portray him as a young man who is forced into a corner before ultimately giving in to a life of crime. The writers didn't know what to do with him, and that is why the character feels like he is all over the place. I can't say much about the acting, since it feels like the actor is doing his best with what he is given. Although there are times when his line delivery feels forced, I would describe the acting as okay at best and forced at worst. I don't even know how to describe his character, since he was all over the place. In a perfect show or movie, every major character should have an arc. Kasisi not having one is not an issue, since the show is about Kevo, and his only role was to further elevate or add on to Kevo's story. But all that being said, Kasisi failed as a character because of one simple reason, and that is inconsistency. As the show begins, we are told that he is not just a common thug, in that he is honorable and lives by some kind of moral code. They want us to believe that he is a kind of Robin Hood, only stealing from the rich and giving back to the poor in his community. This is not the case at all. In fact, a lot of things about him do not make sense at all. Like the fact that he pays a 10,000 shilling daily bribe to the local police to stop them from ending thugs. Now I don't understand why he does this because, number one, they are his competition. Would it not make more sense if they disappeared and left the market for him? And number two, he says that he is not like the other thugs, in that he won't steal from the poor. So why is he obligated to save the other thugs who will steal from the poor? I guess what I'm trying to figure out is why is he obligated to the other thugs? It is not explained properly in the show as to why and how this became his responsibility. Another thing that does not make sense about Kasisi is that he says that he never steals from a sufferer, but that is all he does. Not once does he rob a rich politician or a rich neighborhood. In fact, his area of operation is his own neighborhood, which is not all that rich. This was disappointing for me, since in episode 1, Kevo's chance was stolen by some politician, and later during the episode, we are shown that the politician is campaigning for election with the promise of ending all criminals, and I thought this would play a major role, since both of them will have a proper personal motivation to target the politician. Kevo would do it as revenge, and Kasisi would do it to save his career. All the ingredients were there for the writers to put us, as the audience, in a grey area where we either support them robbing the politician for their stolen opportunities, or not support them because they are breaking the law. They had everything they needed. How did they miss this? And another thing that does not make sense about Kasisi, when they finally get their hands on a firearm, he keeps on saying that if anyone recognizes you, you should abort the mission, which makes sense. But in episode 1, we are shown that he is like a local celebrity, and everyone knows who he is and what he does. So by default, everyone already recognizes him. If I was the police and anything goes missing or wrong in my neighborhood, I'll just start with the career criminal that everyone knows. And one more thing that does not make sense about Kasisi is the moral code that he operates under means nothing to him. Because in episode 1, he kept on talking about how he is a good criminal, and the writers had no way of showing us this other than two random extras just walking up to him and telling him about how good he is. And this goes out to the writers. You can tell us anything you want, but if you don't show it, we will not believe you. In other words, show, don't tell. Because the moment this character that you're trying to tell us is a morally upright criminal gets his hands on a firearm, he robs a local kiosk at gunpoint and ends Olivia's life in cold blood just for recognizing his face, which, by the way, everyone already knows. And before anyone tries defending him, let me ask you this. Which one is easier to deal with? A case about robbery or a case about murder? The problem with Kasisi as a character started from the writing room and persisted all the way to the screen. The writers did not know in which direction to take him. They tried to make him into some kind of anti-hero who does what needs to be done to help his people. But they also tried to make him into a ruthless killer who won't think twice about ending you if you recognize him. But they failed on both accounts. And also, the look was all wrong. The scar on his face looked fake instead of menacing, and the light blue contact lens looked goofy at times. The acting was not good either, as I was not convinced even for a single moment that Isaboke Nyakundi was Kasisi. Now, in this very long video, we have talked about 4 main aspects that I consider when rating a show or a movie: the story, the plot, the technicals, and the characters and acting. The story of Click Click Bang was generic, the plot was contrived, the technicals were flat, the characters and acting was not all that good either. That is why I give Click Click Bang a 4 out of 10. Now, if you like this kind of content and you like watching Kenyan movies and shows like me, I would really appreciate you subscribing, and thank you for getting this far into the video. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.